Hello everyone, welcome back to the Engage UK channel. I'm going to do something slightly different today. Well, something I haven't done for a little while. There's been a lot of reviews, videos like that on the channel. I'm going to go back to something I mentioned a fair while ago when I did a review of this Graham Farish steam locomotive. It's the Class 4 F tender loco in LMS livery, an 060 loco with a tender. And I mentioned at the time when I reviewed it that I would be using it to do some project work to show various things you could do to improve some of these older, more basic models. And today is going to be the first job in that project. And what we're going to be doing today is I'm going to be showing how to fit tender pickups to this locomotive. These you can get from, as you can see in the packet there, from BR Lines, Bob Russell at BR Lines, and price is there, just over £3 for these. And to explain why you might want to think about fitting these to some of your older locos, let's first of all just take the locomotive out of the packaging. It's old style Graham Farish, pre-Barkman days packaging. This one has an inner sleeve which you have to slide out. It's a little bit stiff. There we go. Just going to pop the tender and locomotive out. Now looking at that, as you can see, the drive is only on the centre wheels, and there are pickups on the outer wheels, which obviously has slight issues going over certain points. You know, I mean, the distance between these two sets of wheels is reasonable, but if it so happens that one's on a dead part of a frog and one's where you've got an insulated rail joiner or something like that, you could get slightly erratic running. By putting pickups on the tender as well, we're increasing the distance that the locomotive is picking up, and you're going to get smoother running. You can see the same thing with when you compare an 040 locomotive, for instance, with one of the larger diesels, where you might have 4 or 6 axles quite widely spaced apart on the diesel, and they tend to run a lot more smoothly over point work than something like an 040, which only has a couple of sets of wheels quite close together, and making sure you're getting good electrical contact to both sets of wheels at all times is much more difficult. Now the mechanics of this are pretty simple. You're only going to need a couple of tools. One is a screwdriver, just to take this apart and work on it, and you're also going to need to solder one wire, which isn't too tricky. So let's have a look at what you get in the packet to start with. Open this up. It comes in a little plastic bag with some instructions, and as I say, fairly cheap to buy, just over £3. You get some page of instructions here, as well as 3 or 4 little parts. Getting these out of the bag is not very tricky. There we go. Let's leave that behind. So your instructions are there. Nice diagram to show you what to do. Very simple. And then the parts themselves, you get 2 copper plates which look like this. Let's get that into the camera. Like this. These go into the tender, and these L-shaped pieces on the sides here, sorry I missed the camera there, these L-shaped pieces touch the backs of the wheels to conduct current. One of them goes on the top and has this piece which sticks up. That's where you solder the wire to. The other one goes underneath and is flat, and then you get your little wire. I'll pick that up. There we go. Little wire, very thin, delicate wire, which would be soldered to the top of this, and then onto the locomotive. So let's start. First thing we're going to do is separate the tender from the locomotive, and that's pretty simple on these ones. It's just a screw here which we remove. That means we can take the tender off, and then once we've got that off we can disassemble it and start to work on it. So I'm just going to take that screw off and I'll be right back. Okay, well, I'm just releasing that screw far enough to do it by hand. Okay, and now I can take the locomotive, put that aside, and we are going to need that in a while. Keep the screw nice and safe, and it's just to use the bag that these parts came in, put that in there, and now we've got the tender separate. Okay, and that looks like that, and it's in various sections. You've got like a bottom chassis section, a middle section, and then this top section, and to separate it there is one screw here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to separate the tender. What we'll find is that the coupling will come out. We can put that back in quite easily. So unscrewing this screw here with our small screwdriver. Okay. Quite a long screw. When you remove it, you'll find the separate sections of the tender come apart. First part is this bottom plate. This is just plastic and it just holds the thing together. It looks like that. Put that aside. Next you'll see the inside of the coupler pocket revealed. Bring that up a bit closer. You can see the coupler on the spring at the end here, and the 3 axles which are just sitting in slots. So very carefully we invert it, we can take that out. That's the main body of the tender. We can put that aside for a moment. Take the wheels out. Need those later. And just for safety, to save this pinging off and going flying out around the room or something, I'm going to remove the coupler and spring. Just put those aside. That spring is actually fairly neatly in there. Get that out. There we go. The coupler and spring out, and again put it neatly away for use later. Okay, so this is the main metal part of the tender chassis, and it has a top plate, an isolating plate here. Yep. And what we want to do is we want the remembering that this is the back, we want to put one plate, then place the isolating plate, one tender pickup on, then fit the second tender pickup and attach the wire to it and run the wire through to the locomotive. So the first part, looking at our instructions, it tells you which way around to do it. You've got the chassis block here, you put your tender pickup here, yeah. The coupler end is at this end and the loco end is at this end. So we want the pickup to be on the opposite, on the right hand side, if we were looking towards the locomotive. This is the coupler end, so let's turn that around so it matches the picture. And this will go on with the pickup on that side. And there is a hole, the front end. There we go, and that just pushes over, like so. I hope you can see that. Of course it is a very small piece. That is now engaged in this peg here and this screw hole here, which has a raised surround which the pickup slips over. Next put the this isolating plate back on, and that will hold these together. Oh, just working out which way around this goes. Yep, there is a rebate which that clicks into. Yeah, that's it. Now it's clicked down and it's holding it firmly. Okay, so this would go on this way. Like so. Now these things are quite slim, so obviously they can have a tendency to bend, but shouldn't be a problem. It will fit down flush. There we go, like so. And we now need to solder the wire to it. Obviously you can take it back off to solder the wire to it before we fit it. So I'm just going to pause for a moment. I'm going to solder this very thin wire to here. Sorry, to here, and that will run through to the tender. Sorry, to the locomotive. Back in a sec. Okay, well that was a fairly simple job. All I've done is I've fixed the wire to the top of that tender pickup, and you can pass it through quite easily and solder it. Pretty simple. And now we can actually start to reassemble the tender. This wire we're going to need to solder to the locomotive. Just explain the electrics in a sec. But in preparation for that, one thing I did do was I have taken the body off of the locomotive. It's very simple to do. There's just 2 screws, one at each end. One is very similar to the tender end. It holds the little spacer here, which links the 2 together, and that also conducts current from one side. And the other one is at the coupling end, and on this one the coupler is all in one piece. There's no spring or anything, and I might not put that back on when I put the whole thing back together again, because I don't really need the front coupler anyway. And where we're going to attach that wire is between the brush clip and the TV suppressor at the top here. But going back to the tender, we've got our first pickup fitted, and one thing I've done, I've just bent these out a little bit, because these are going to contact the backs of the wheels, so we want them pushed out so there's a little bit of spring on them and they are touching the backs of the wheels here. So this pickup will go on the other way. Now the coupler pocket is there, so let's just turn that round. So that's the back. This will go on this way with the wire, excuse me, with the wire towards the locomotive, like so. And again, we can just take a look at that. Get that over. There we go. Take a look at that, see if they need, I think we could just do with just bending that one out a little bit, just so it sticks out nice and neatly. And also I'm just gonna bend the end up a little bit, because it's a little bit flush towards the body of the tender. Okay, now we can put the tender back together. Well, with a little bit of trial and error, I've managed to get all the pickups touching the back of the wheels and the wheels back on. What I actually found was it was easier to do one side, put the wheels on, and then slide the second one on and just pull it over. It's still trying to lift a little bit, that's because of the springiness of this, but that will be sorted out when we put the rest of the tender back on. So the next thing is to put the coupler spring and coupler back in and put the cover plate back on the underneath. So I'm just going to do that now. So I've got the coupler back in position, I've put the screw through, ready to attach this back now to the tender body. just checking that all those pickups are touching the backs of the wheels, and then I'll put the tender body back on.